Welcome to our deep dive into auditory processing disorder and ADHD. These terms often pop up in mental health discussions, but they can be confusing. Let's demystify them together. Auditory processing disorder, often known as APD, is a condition that affects how the brain processes spoken language. It's not about hearing acuity, but rather how the brain understands and interprets sounds, especially speech. On the other hand, we have ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. This is a brain disorder marked by an ongoing pattern of inattention and/or hyperactivity impulsivity. It's not just about being overly active or not paying attention. ADHD can interfere with a person's functioning or development, making everyday tasks challenging. These disorders, while different, share some commonalities and can even coexist. Understanding these disorders can help us better support those who live with them. But how exactly do they function? Stay tuned as we delve deeper into these intriguing topics. Diving deeper, what exactly is auditory processing disorder? Let's take a moment to understand this disorder. Auditory processing disorder, or APD, is a condition that affects how the brain processes auditory information. It's not a hearing problem. Rather, it's a difficulty with how the brain interprets sounds, especially speech. Imagine you're in a crowded room full of chatter. For most of us, we can tune into one conversation without much difficulty. But for someone with APD, this can be a challenging task. They may struggle to understand speech in noisy environments, making it hard to follow along in conversations, classrooms, or social settings. Another common symptom of APD is difficulty following directions, especially multi-step instructions. You might say, first pick up your toys, then put on your shoes, and finally, grab your backpack. But a child with APD might only process part of these instructions, leaving them feeling lost or overwhelmed. Additionally, distinguishing between similar sounds can be a hurdle. Words like cat and hat or 50 and 15 might sound the same to someone with APD. This can lead to misunderstandings and frustration, both for the person with APD and for those communicating with them. So APD is all about struggles with processing and understanding auditory information. It's a complex disorder, but with a better understanding, we can support those who live with it every day. Now let's shift focus to ADHD. What does it entail? ADHD, or attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder, is a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects both children and adults. It's characterized by persistent patterns of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity that are more frequent and severe than is typical for an individual's age and development. Inattention in ADHD might manifest as forgetfulness, difficulty staying focused, or a tendency to make careless mistakes. For example, a child with ADHD might struggle to follow through on instructions or frequently lose important items like their homework or keys. Hyperactivity, on the other hand, often involves excessive fidgeting, talking, or restlessness. In a classroom setting, a student with ADHD might frequently leave their seat, run around, or have trouble participating in quiet activities. Impulsivity in ADHD can lead to hasty actions taken without thinking about the potential consequences. This might involve interrupting others, having difficulty waiting their turn, or making important decisions without fully considering the implications. These symptoms can interfere with functioning in various settings, including school, home, and social situations. For instance, a child with ADHD might have trouble keeping up with assignments at school or maintaining friendships. Importantly, it's not that individuals with ADHD don't want to focus or calm down. Rather, they often find it challenging to do so, much like how someone with nearsightedness struggles to see objects in the distance. ADHD, on the other hand, is characterized by a pattern of inattention and/or hyperactivity impulsivity. So, how do APD and ADHD compare and contrast? That's the question we're going to tackle in this part of our discussion. Let's start with the similarities. Both auditory processing disorder, or APD, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, can lead to difficulties with attention and focus. This can manifest as trouble following directions, difficulty staying on task, or problems with remembering information. So if you're noticing these signs, it could be either APD or ADHD or even both. However, despite these similarities, it's crucial to understand that APD and ADHD are not the same. They are distinct conditions, each with its own unique challenges and characteristics. APD is a hearing disorder. It's not about the ability to hear sounds, but rather the brain's ability to interpret those sounds. People with APD can hear just fine, but their brains struggle to process and make sense of the auditory information. This might mean having difficulty understanding speech in noisy environments or struggling to follow complex verbal instructions. On the other hand, ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. It's characterized by persistent patterns of inattention, impulsivity, and sometimes hyperactivity that interfere with functioning or development. For example, a child with ADHD might struggle to stay focused on a task, frequently interrupt others, or be constantly on the move. One key point to remember is that it's entirely possible for a person to have both conditions at the same time. Yes, you heard it right, APD and ADHD can coexist. This can make diagnosis and treatment more complex, but with the right support and strategies in place, people with these conditions can certainly lead successful and fulfilling lives. So, in short, while APD and ADHD share some overlapping symptoms, each presents its own unique set of challenges. Moreover, these conditions are not mutually exclusive and can indeed occur together. While they share some overlapping symptoms, APD and ADHD are distinct conditions with unique challenges. So, we've covered quite a bit about APD and ADHD. What are the takeaways? Well, we've delved deep into the heart of auditory processing disorder, or APD. We've understood it as a difficulty in the brain's ability to process sounds, while its symptoms can include trouble following spoken directions and distinguishing similar sounds. Then, we moved on to ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. We've painted a picture of it as a condition marked by persistent inattention, hyperactivity, and sometimes impulsivity. We've also explored the fascinating intersections and divergences between these two disorders. While they share some similarities such as difficulties in attention and concentration, they are fundamentally different in their origins and manifestations. And yes, it's possible for someone to have both disorders at the same time, which underscores the importance of understanding each one individually. Remember, understanding is the first step to acceptance, and only with acceptance can there be recovery.